Tonight, you'll wake before dawn in Tang Dynasty Chang'an and spend the day making and selling hot Roujiamo in the West Market. If you enjoy cozy food history, quiet, historical immersion, and sleep stories built around everyday life, this one is for you. The fire has been going for a while now. You can tell by the way the copper pot has settled into its rhythm, a slow, steady simmer, the broth barely moving on the surface, just small circles of heat rising and falling. The charcoal is elm wood. It burns low and even. Orange light shifts across the wall of the small room, across your hands, across the round mound of dough resting on the cloth beside you. The dough has been rising since before dawn. By the time the market opens, it will be ready, pressed flat, baked over the coals until the outside turns golden and just faintly crisp. Then, split open, filled with meat from that pot. But that is later. Right now, there is just the smell. Cassia, bark, cracked grass fruit, a few black peppercorns from the western markets, enough to warm the air, not enough to sting. Beneath all of it, the deep, round smell of pork belly slowly giving itself over to the broth. Fat softening, fibers loosening, meat that has been in the pot long enough to stop resisting. The whole broth growing darker, richer, more itself with every passing minute. You are sitting on a low wooden stool, close to the fire, not doing much, just watching. Outside, Chang'an is still dark and quiet. The alleys are empty. The wide stone streets that run straight as rulers through the city still, for now. A distant drum sounds 1, 2, then silence. The night patrol passing through. Someone's lamp flickers behind a paper window across the courtyard, then goes still. Everything is in order. The city is holding its breath before the day begins. Inside, there is just the fire, the pot, the resting dough, and the slow, unhurried smell of a meal still becoming. You have time. The market does not open for a while yet, so you stay close to the warmth. You listen to the broth. You let the smell of cassia and slow-cooked meat settle around you like something familiar, and you wait. For a while, you do nothing at all. You let the warmth, the rising dough, and the deepening broth keep their slow rhythm beside you until the morning is ready for hands again. You oil the board lightly and turn the dough out into your hands. It comes free in one soft mass, warm at the surface from the stove's edge, elastic and easy to handle. You divide it by feel rather than measure, rolling each portion into a smooth round between your palms before pressing it flat. The shape matters. Thicker at the edge, slightly thinner in the middle. That way, the bread will hold its filling later, while the center drinks in the broth. One by one, you set the rounds into the bamboo steamer. Steam is already waiting in the pot below. When the lid goes on, thin white threads begin to slip from the woven edges almost at once. The bread will need time there first, enough for the inside to become soft and open, enough for the dough to lose its heaviness and turn light. While it steams, you tend the meat again. You lift the lid from the copper pot and turn the pieces with your chopsticks, giving each one a little time near the deepest heat. The broth is richer now, dark gold leaning toward brown-red, catching the firelight like old lacquer. When you touch one piece with the tip of a chopstick, it yields easily, not falling apart yet, just readying itself. The smell rises around you again, deeper than before. Soon the bread will come out of the steam. Soon it will go over the coals and take on color. Soon the first crust will crack under the knife, and the first spoonful of meat and broth will go inside. But not yet, for now there is only this room, the low fire, the covered steam, and the copper pot moving quietly beside you as the city waits for morning to fully arrive. By the time the dough has fully come into itself, the broth has deepened too. What has been resting and simmering quietly beside the fire is ready now to be shaped by hand. When the dough has risen to nearly double its morning size, you lift the cloth and press it gently with the back of your hand. It pushes back slowly and completely. The surface is smooth, faintly glossy, marked by small bubbles just beneath the skin. The smell is clean and warm, the mild sourness of the starter, and beneath it something simpler and more fundamental, the scent of flour and water that have become, over the past hour, something more than either. You scatter a thin layer of rapeseed oil across the surface of the workboard and set the basin down. Then you pull the dough out in one smooth motion and divide it. Not by measuring, by feel. You have done this enough mornings that your hands know the portion size without needing to count. Each piece is rounded into a ball between your two palms, then set to rest on the board for a moment before being pressed flat. You press with the heel of your hand first, working from the center outward. Then you turn the piece a quarter rotation and press again. The bread round you're making is thick at the outer ring and slightly thinner in the middle, a shape that matters, because the thick edge provides a wall to hold the meat and broth inside once the bread is sliced open, while the thinner center will soften more fully during baking and absorb more of the braising liquid. Your old teacher showed you this shape on his first day of teaching you. He demonstrated it 3 times without explanation, just showed you the motion. When you finally understood the reason for it, when you first bit into the bread and felt the way the outer crust held while the inner part had drunk itself full of broth, you understood why he hadn't bothered to explain. Some things are only learned through the hands. You line the shaped rounds in the bamboo steamer, leaving space between them, and lower the steamer over a pot of already simmering water. The steam comes up steadily, gathering against the woven lid, beginning to rise in slow, thin threads from the gaps at the edges. You put the lid on and let the fire do the rest. About the time it takes to slowly count to 1,000, that is how long the rounds need in the steam. Long enough for the inside to cook through completely, for the dough to lose its rawness and become the open, porous structure. That is the whole point of this method. While the bread steams, you keep tending the meat. The broth by now has reduced somewhat. It is darker, denser, with a surface layer of fat that rolls in slow rings when you tilt the pot slightly. You skim the surface with a flat-bottomed ladle, drawing the foam and excess fat away, clearing the liquid so it deepens in color rather than clouding. When you poke one of the larger pork pieces with a chopstick, the stick passes in without resistance. Smooth entry. No catch. No springback. The fat layers have fully dissolved into the tissue. The muscle fibers have separated, but not yet lost their structure. Another slow half-hour, and the broth will be exactly right. When the steamed rounds come out, they are white and plump and rounded at the top, with a surface slightly glistening from the steam. You tap one gently with a fingernail. It sounds soft, giving, alive. Now comes the fire. You move the rounds to the low iron grate set directly over the charcoal, spacing them evenly, watching. The change begins at the edges. First, the white surface of the steamed bread takes on a faint yellow, then deepens toward gold. A quiet sound starts, a dry, almost papery whisper, the surface moisture burning away. Then a low, steady sizzling as the outer skin begins to firm and crisp. The smell shifts, the clean steam scent replaced with something richer, slightly caramelized, the wheat beginning to brown. You turn each round once, using 2 flat sticks, working quickly and gently. The undersides have gone to a deep golden color, their surfaces now stiff enough to tap a hollow, light sound, the sound you are listening for. The top rounds are still soft, still light in color. You give them another minute over the heat. When they are done, each round is a study in 2 textures, the outer crust thin and crisp, the color of autumn wheat, faintly cracked along the natural seams that formed during steaming, the interior still the soft, cloud-like structure from the fermented dough. You tap one again. It rings. You set them in a shallow bamboo basket lined with a cloth, stacking them in a single layer, not too close together. They will hold their texture for the morning rush. When the last of the breads has taken on its color, the room has changed with them. The sky beyond the doorway is no longer dark, and the city is beginning to stir. By the time the bread is ready and the broth has reached its depth, the sky outside is fully pale. Not daylight yet, that particular pale silver white just before the sun rises, when objects have their shapes but not yet their colors. The lane outside is quiet but no longer still. You hear the faint rumble of a cartwheel somewhere in the next street, the sound of a shutter being unlatched, then a door drawn back, a child's voice, cut short, then silence. The great city drum. Somewhere inside the high palace walls to the north, the ceremonial drum begins to sound. It carries across the whole city not a quick signal, not a double knock, but a long, rolling thunder of beats that will continue until 3,000 strokes have been counted. When the drum falls silent for the final time, the market gates will open. The food sellers and goods merchants and water carriers will file in from every direction, and Chang'an's West Market will come alive. You have time. You use it to decant the broth. With a ladle, you move the braised pork pieces from the copper pot into the smaller clay serving pot that sits on the cart's lower shelf. The clay pot has thick walls, slow to lose heat. Once sealed with its flat-fitting lid, it will keep the meat at a steady temperature for hours. You ladle broth over the meat enough to keep everything submerged, enough to spare for spooning into each bread as you assemble it throughout the morning. The surface of the broth in the clay pot shimmers with fat, amber and copper-toned, carrying the faint ghosts of all the aromatics that have been dissolving into it since before the first light of morning. You wrap the bread basket in a layer of cotton cloth to hold its warmth. Then you wheel out the cart. The cart is wooden, low-slung, resting on 4 small wheels whose axles you oiled with rapeseed oil before bed last night. It rolls quietly, the wheels turning without protest. The cart's surface holds everything in its designated place: the bamboo steamer rack at the back, the bread basket secured to one side, the clay pot set in a recessed ring at the center to keep it from sliding. A small block of charcoal, still glowing, goes into the firebox underneath, to keep the pot warm during the walk to the market. You check the wooden signboard hanging from the front corner of the cart, a piece of smooth planed wood painted in dark ink, steamed and baked bread, stuffed with braised pork. Below it, in smaller characters, a line your teacher helped you write in your first year: crust crisp, inside soft, meat tender, broth rich. You push the cart out through the courtyard gate and into the lane. The stones are still damp. Your footsteps sound soft, muffled. You join a thin current of early workers moving in the same direction, a tofu seller carrying 2 trays balanced on a long shoulder pole, a woman walking quickly with a bundle wrapped in cloth on her back, 2 men in the short tunics of dock workers talking quietly as they walk, everyone moving toward the same gates. A little ahead of you, you recognize the bread and sesame man from the oilseed stall, 2 positions over a compact, good-natured man who has been working this market since well before you arrived. He turns at the sound of your cart and raises a hand in greeting. "Good heat on those today," he says, nodding at your pot. You can see the steam beginning to rise from under the lid. "Better than yesterday." You smile and tell him the fire was just right this morning. The West Market is not the polished kind of marketplace, not the kind where foreign curiosities are displayed behind silk curtains for wealthy buyers. This is a working market. Wide, loud, direct, full of the smells of food and animals and the cold morning air. Farmers bring their seasonal goods in from outside the city walls. Porters and messengers stop on their way to assignments. Small traders set up around the perimeter, calling out across the stone surface. And through all of it, the foreign merchants, men from Persia, from the lands along the far western routes, from India, from the eastern peninsula, move with their loads of goods, their camel bells marking their progress before you see them. You know your place. It is under the old scholar tree near the south gate, a tree wide enough to throw good shade by mid-morning, close enough to the main pedestrian lane that the smell of your broth will carry toward arriving customers, sheltered enough from the wind that the charcoal under your pot stays even. You chose it carefully in your first weeks here and have held it since. The market's rules on this are clear. Your position is yours. You do not set up in someone else's space. Disputes go to the market supervisor. Everyone knows the rules. Everyone follows them. The market functions because of this, because 10,000 small agreements, enforced by habit and by the authority of the market wardens, hold the whole complicated structure in place. You park the cart, extend the cloth awning a wide panel of undyed hemp, fixed to 2 bamboo poles, enough to cover you and the cart and 2 standing customers at once, and tie it off. Then you open the bread basket. The steam that rises is immediate and visible. Wheat, char, the faint tang of the fermentation. It drifts sideways in the early morning air. You take a slow breath. The day begins. You have barely settled the cart beneath the tree before the first footsteps turn toward you. In a city this large, hot bread and rich broth are never left waiting for long. The first customer arrives almost before you have fully settled. He is a courier, one of the official message runners who work the relay system connecting the city to the road networks stretching outward in every direction. You know the type by their clothing: a short indigo tunic, a government-issued courier's tag hanging at the belt. His face is already damp. He has been moving since before you arrive. 1 bread with meat, he says, already reaching for his coin pouch. Extra broth. You take a baked round from the basket. It is firm and warm, its surface golden, still holding the slight give of the interior when you press it lightly. You set it on the flat cutting board and draw a small knife once across the middle, a clean, decisive motion. The crust cracks open with a dry, sharp sound, the resistance of the outer shell giving way instantly to the softness inside. You pull the 2 halves apart just wide enough to work. Then the wooden spoon into the clay pot. You lift out a piece of the braised pork, glistening, dark amber at the edges, its fat layers collapsed into the lean, and lay it on the cutting board. With the spoon's edge, you press and break the meat apart into rough pieces. The broth comes with it, seeping into the board in a small dark pool. You work quickly, load the meat into the open bread, press it gently with the spoon to seat it, then tilt the ladle and pour a generous amount of broth directly inside, over the meat, letting it soak into the bread's porous inner surface. Then the chopped pepper, a small handful of the fresh green variety, its scent clean and sharp, its color bright against the dark meat. This pepper arrived in the city through the same trade routes that brought so many things, carried west to east, passed from hand to hand, absorbed into the street food of Chang'an until it became as ordinary as the wheat itself. You pinch the bread together at the opening to hold everything in. The courier takes it with both hands. He is already walking as he bites a full, committed bite that cracks through the outer crust with an audible sound. He stops walking. For one moment he stands still, chewing, his eyes going slightly distant. Then he turns back. "Still hot?" he says. "Good broth." He keeps walking. He has a long road to the eastern gate, several miles of morning city, before he reaches the relay station where his message is due. He tells you this while still moving, calling back over his shoulder, the bread held in one hand, steam rising from the open end. You watch him go, Then turn back to the cart. The scholars come in a group of 3. They are young, barely into the age that calls itself adult, and tired in the way that comes not from physical work, but from long hours spent at lamplight with books. Their robes are the plain blue-gray of students, their book bags worn at the corners, their ink-stained fingers a giveaway even from a distance. One of them is rubbing his right eye with the heel of his palm. Another has a redness at the throat that suggests he has been reading aloud to himself through the night. 3 breads, the tallest one says. His voice has the slight roughness of too much talking and too little sleep. And 2 of the herbal drinks, if you have them, you have them. The drink, a preparation of licorice root, sour plum, and rock sugar, simmered together until the liquid turns dark and fragrant, sits in a sealed clay jar beside the cart. You pour 2 portions into coarse ceramic bowls. The liquid is dark amber, slightly sweet, with a faint, sour trailing note from the plum. It cools the throat and clears the head. You started making it partly for yourself, then discovered that students, in particular, came back for it. You make their 3 breads quickly, each one full of meat and broth, each one topped with the green pepper. You hand them over, wrapped in a square of clean cloth so the broth does not run. The 3 scholars take their food to the low stone platform at the base of the scholar tree and sit. They eat, without speaking at first, the particular quiet of people who are tired and hungry and have been given something good. One of them bites into his bread and immediately has to tilt his head slightly to stop the broth from running. He laughs a little and wipes his chin with his sleeve. "This is really something," he says. The crust holds. The inside has gone completely soft, and it has soaked up every bit of the broth. Not even slightly greasy. Just rich. The tallest one takes a long sip of the herbal drink, sets the bowl on the stone, and exhales slowly. Spring wind, lucky horseshoes, flowers all through the city, he says, an old phrase used to describe examination success, the dream of every young man who travels to the capital. That's what they say about the ones who pass. How easy it sounds. The third, slight and careful in his movements, wraps both hands around his bowl. 10 years of studying, and it comes down to a few days, he says quietly. But we've done the work. Whatever happens, we've done the work. And when it's over, pass or not, I'm coming back here and asking for the bread with double meat. You smile at that. The examinations held in this city are not easy to reach or easy to pass. Most of those who attempt them have been preparing for years, some for a decade or more. Success opens a path that is otherwise almost entirely closed to a position, an income, a social standing otherwise reserved for those born into the right families. Failure means returning home, or trying again next year, or finding another way entirely. Your old teacher knew of a man who sold flatbread in the West Market for years, passed the examination late in middle age, and eventually held a minor official post in the city. The story circulated among the stalls for a long time after. You do not know if it is true, but you have thought about it more than once. The scholars finish their breads and their drinks, pay with a small stack of copper coins, and take their leave, heading back in the direction of the examination district. The morning crowd thins little by little, leaving behind the warmth of coins in your palm and the smell of broth in the air. By the time the sun climbs higher, the market has entered its steadier, more watchful hour. Mid-morning brings the market wardens. There are 2 of them today, an official in a green-gray administrative robe, a copperfish-shaped badge at his belt, and 2 assistants in dark work tunics carrying wooden staffs. They move slowly along the stall line, stopping at intervals. Their job is to check. Are the weights and measures accurate? Are the goods what they claim to be? Is anyone taking up more than their allotted space? Any discrepancy discovered gets marked with a red ink note, and the stall holder summoned later to the market office. Repeated violations mean the loss of the market registration, the small wooden tag that grants the right to operate here at all. Without that tag, there is no stall, no income, no place in the city's commerce. You straighten your back as they approach. Your scale is the kind issued and calibrated by the official weights bureau you had it verified when you first registered your cart, and you take it in for re-verification at the start of each new year. Your breads are consistently portioned. You do not pad the weight with water or shortcuts. These are not moral positions, exactly, or rather, they are also practical ones. The market works because people can trust what they buy. Your customers come back because what they received last time was what they expected. Your teacher told you this plainly on the first day. The stall is not just about the food. It is about the contract between the seller and the person standing in front of them. The senior warden stops at your cart. He looks at the signboard, at the pot, at the bread basket. "Good today?" he asks. "Good today?" you say. He nods once and moves on. By noon, the sun has become something else entirely. It presses down on the stone surface of the market with a flat, determined heat that draws all the moisture out of the air and sends it up in a visible shimmer above the widest stretches of the road. The market's foot traffic drops. People drift toward whatever shade they can find under the eaves of the covered stalls, along the wall, where the great elm trees lean their branches. The sound level drops. The selling voices get quieter, more conversational, less urgent. You wheel your cart into the deep shade under the scholar tree and sit. You pour a bowl of the herbal drink for yourself. It is cooler than the morning air now. The clay jar keeps it from going warm for several hours. You drink it slowly, feeling the sourness of the plum and the gentle sweetness of the licorice settle in your throat. The broth pot still sits quietly on its charcoal bed, a thin wreath of steam rising from the lid's edge. The meat is well past done. It has been keeping slowly, deepening in flavor, for hours now. You take out the flatbreads you brought for your own meal and eat without hurrying. Then, as the heat settles over the stones and the market slows into its midday hush, a different kind of customer appears. He carries the road with him before he has even spoken. The Persian merchant finds you in the midday slow. He is easy to identify. The pointed cap of layered felt, the narrow-sleeved robe woven with metallic thread in patterns of interlocking shapes, the dark beard kept short and precise. He speaks your language in a working fashion enough to conduct transactions clearly, enough to ask a price and understand the answer, though the tones sometimes slide away from where they should land. 2 breads with meat, he says, holding up 2 fingers, and one of the sesame flatbreads. You nod and begin the assembly. 2 stuffed breads, each prepared the same way, crisp, cracked open, meat and broth loaded in, the green pepper scattered on top. For the sesame flatbread, you reach into the second basket at the cart's far corner, where a small number of a different bread style is kept. Thinner rounds made from coarser flour mixed with sesame seed, then baked directly against the heated clay surface of a small cylindrical oven you carry rolled in cloth beneath the cart. These are older in style, a bread that came from the western regions long ago and has been so thoroughly absorbed into the city's food landscape that most people no longer think of it as foreign at all. The poet wrote about it once, the sesame bread of the capital, with its crisp, oil-fragrant surface, so celebrated that people wrote letters asking for it to be sent to distant provinces. The merchant takes his food and holds one of the stuffed breads close to his face for a moment, breathing in before he bites. His eyes close briefly. Then he bites. The sound travels. He stands there in the shade of the scholar tree, eating without speaking, occasionally drawing the back of his hand across his mouth. When he finishes the first bread, he picks up the second. He eats that one more slowly, pausing between bites, the expression on his face that of someone thinking rather than just tasting. Good, he says finally, in his working language version of the word. Then, better than anything in Persia? You raise your eyebrows. He lifts one hand in a kind of conceding gesture. Different, he says. Very different, but very good. He pays with copper coins, counts them out carefully, and then, after a moment's consideration, reaches into the inner fold of his robe and produces a small stone, translucent, faintly reddish, the size of a large grape. He sets it on the cart surface beside the coin stack. You push it gently back toward him and shake your head. The price is the price. You thank him for the gesture. He looks at you for a moment, then picks the stone back up and tucks it away. He raises his thumb in the gesture you have come to recognize, the same approval sign used by merchants from a dozen different countries who pass through this market. Then he picks up his sesame bread and walks back into the brightness of the market lane. You watch him go. Chang'an has absorbed so much from the western roads. The pepper in your broth, the green chili you scatter over the meat, the sesame in the flatbreads, the style of kneading certain doughs, the spice merchants themselves, who arrived with their camels and their trade goods and their languages and stayed long enough to become part of the city's texture. Your old teacher used to say that every stall in this market has something in it that came from somewhere else, that the whole city is a kind of long, slow distillation of everything that traveled its roads. A city that opens its gates gets richer for it, he said. You thought of it as the way a good broth gets made. The longer it simmers with good things added from many sources, the deeper it becomes. When he is gone, the market feels wider again, brighter and hotter. The hour has come for cooler things, and for the small changes a long summer day asks of a food seller. In the afternoon, you bring out a different kind of bread. The method is simple. Baked rounds from the morning, now fully cooled, sliced open as usual, but filled differently with thin-cut cucumber strips, shredded white radish, and a spoonful of fermented bean paste, slightly salty, slightly funky, with a depth that the fresh vegetables sharpen into something clean and bright. Cucumber was brought to this part of the world from the western regions during an older era. Its original name in the language of this country was the western melon. By now, it grows in every garden and market. In high summer, no vegetable is more welcome. The flesh is cold, even on a hot day. The juice clean-tasting, the crunch immediate and satisfying. Paired with the mild sweetness of the white radish and the salt of the bean paste, it makes the cooled bread into something that belongs to a different meal entirely from the hot braised meat version. You arrange a small row of the cool breads at the front corner of the cart, visible, where the smell of the cucumber and the bean paste can add a different note to the air around the stall. 4 young women stop almost simultaneously. They move together as a group, dressed in layered skirts with wide, softly gathered hems that lift slightly in the breeze, their hair arranged in high, double-loop style, fresh flowers tucked at the crown. One of them wears a peony, pink at the edges, white at the center, still fully open. They have a servant girl behind them carrying a lacquered food box. 2 of the cool breads. The one with the peony says. Her voice is light, clear. And 3 of the cold herbal drinks? Do you have cold ones? You do. The ice block has been under the cart all day, wrapped in its thick cotton quilts, slow to melt, keeping the jar beside it at a temperature that makes the outside of the bowl cloud with condensation when you pour. You open the wooden box under the cart. The cold air comes up from it immediately, a thin, clean breath of something that does not belong to this summer afternoon. The ice block, wrapped in cloth, is reduced from its morning size, but still substantial, still glossy with meltwater along the surface where the cloth has contacted it. You pack 3 bowls with the cold herbal drink. The bowls immediately bead on the outside with fine water droplets, running in thin lines down toward the table surface. Chang'an keeps its ice from winter. The government ice stores are deep pits, several stories below ground level, lined with straw and sealed with clay, dug into the banks of the rivers north of the city. Workers cut the blocks from the river surface in winter and carry them in before the spring. In summer, the stores are opened and the ice sold or distributed first to the palace and high households, then to the larger establishments. Then, in small portions, to those traders who know to order early and pay the price. You do not use it lavishly. The block you buy each few days is a calculated portion, kept tight in its quilted box, measured out 1 bowl at a time. But on a day like this one, there is no more compelling offering on the cart. The young women take their cool breads and their cold drinks to the stone platform under the tree. They eat delicately small bites, the cucumber crunching audibly, even from where you stand, and talk among themselves in voices low enough that you catch only the rhythm of their conversation rather than the words. One of them takes a long, slow sip from her bowl and opens her eyes wide. "Cold," she says, and says it again, smiling. "Actually cold. In this city, women move through the public spaces of the market, the temple, precincts, the broad avenues. The riverbank parks more freely than in many other places in this time. They come to stalls like yours without needing an escort, pay for what they want, sit where they choose. You have grown used to this, though your teacher, who had traveled elsewhere, still occasionally remarked on it with a kind of quiet appreciation. Longan is not everywhere, he would say. The women finish, pay, and move on, in a drift of skirt, fabric, and the smell of fresh flowers. The afternoon light begins, almost imperceptibly, to soften. What was bright and high a little while ago now leans toward evening, and the market changes with it once again. The sun moves lower, and the market's character changes again. The midday merchants begin to pack their specialty goods away. The stall rhythms slow. Then, as the shadows lengthen and the stone surface of the market loses some of its radiated heat, a different kind of customer arrives, the people coming off work, craftsmen in workshop aprons, carrying the particular smell of their materials, sawdust, lacquer, fired clay, hammered metal. Merchants and their assistants, done with the serious transactions of the day, stopping on the way home. Neighbors from the surrounding residential blocks, walking out in the cooler air to buy the evening's food before the market bell signals the closing. The pace picks up again. Not the sharp intensity of the morning rush, something looser, more conversational. People taking their time. A couple stands at the cart for several minutes, discussing whether to take one bread or two, and you hold your ladle and wait without impatience. A young man asks to see the bread before you stuff it, and you show him one straight from the basket, still crisp, and he nods and says yes. The government market bell is coming. The rule here has been the same for generations. The drum opens the market at midday. The bell closes it before sunset. The foreign merchants from the western routes sometimes ask for more time. Their caravans arrive late. Their deals run long, and there are compromises made. Sometimes, near the western market's edge, where things close slightly later than elsewhere. But the bell is the bell. An elderly man stops at your cart as the afternoon begins its final hour. He buys one bread with meat, counts his coins carefully from a small cloth purse, and takes the bread to the stone platform. He eats unhurriedly, in the manner of someone who has nowhere urgent to be, and nowhere he would rather be than exactly here. You watch him between other customers. When he is nearly done, he looks up and calls over to you. "You do this well," he says. The quality of his voice is a former teacher's voice, considered precise, calm. The outside is firm without being hard. The inside has softened but still has body. The broth has gone into the bread without turning it wet. The meat is fully cooked but still holds together. He pauses. That is not easy to get right. He was a seller of brushes and ink. He tells you he still is, though the trade is quieter than it was. When he was young, the West Market had more foreign entertainers, more of the Western-style street performances that would draw crowds in the evenings. The market at night was a different kind of place, louder, more spectacle. Then the city tightened its evening rules. The nighttime gatherings were scaled back, and the market quieted after dark. I passed the examinations when I was young, he says, in the tone of someone mentioning something that happened in another life. The night I found out, a group of us went to a restaurant on the west side of this market and ate well into the evening. There was something like this bread with braised pork on the table. I have not thought about that in years. He finishes his bread. He thanks you, nods carefully, and makes his way back into the evening foot traffic. By now, the day is narrowing. The bell has not yet finished the market, but you can feel the last stretch of it gathering in the air. The bell's counting strokes begin to sound. 300 beats, slow and clear, carrying across every part of the West Market. Stall holders begin folding away their awnings, tying off their goods, loading carts. The tide of foot traffic is reversing away from the market gates, back toward the residential blocks. The last customer of your day arrives as you are beginning to fold your own awning. He is from the Eastern Peninsula, from the kingdom called Silla, which lies beyond the sea, to the east of the continent. He is dressed in the style of the city, a plain scholar's robe, hair arranged in the local fashion, his language fluent and easy. If you did not know, you might not think to ask. He tells you himself, almost immediately, with the pride of someone who wants the city to know he has come a long way to see it. He has brought high-quality ginseng root and silk cloth to sell here. He will stay for some time, long enough to see more than the market, he hopes. He has heard about this city for as long as he can remember. The wide, straight avenues. The hundreds of thousands of people. The goods from every direction stacked in every stall. He quotes a verse that circulates about Chang'an, the great road connecting its broad lanes, the carriages of painted wood and embossed metal, the horses white as snow. He heard it first at home, reading it on a page. Now he has walked the road himself. He buys one bread with meat. His first bite stops him where he stands. This is, he starts, and then doesn't finish, and takes another bite instead. He shakes his head slowly. I don't have something like this at home. Nothing with this combination, the crunch, then softness, then the broth coming through, then the spice at the end. It keeps changing. You tell him the idea is to use the bread itself as part of the dish, not just a carrier for the filling, but something that becomes part of the flavor as it absorbs the broth. He thinks about this for a moment, still chewing. Then he nods with the seriousness of someone filing information away. He pays, thanks you, and walks on into the evening. You watch his figure join the stream of people moving toward the residential quarters, his scholar's robe settling into the ordinary crowd of 100 different origins, making their way home through the last of the day's light. when the last customer disappears into the evening crowd, the day folds inward at once. What was public all day long becomes private again. The cart, the tools, the courtyard, the quiet. You take the cart back through the south gate as the last resonance of the market bell fades into the blocks and walls of the city. The streets are different now. The fast-moving current of the morning cartwheels and shoulder poles and quick steps has settled into something slower. Neighbors calling across walls. The smell of evening cooking drifting from open kitchen doors. A child being carried home on a father's back, already half asleep. The lanterns are being lit. Their light is amber yellow, not the crisp light of morning, but something softer, rounder, more forgiving of edges. You navigate by feel as much as by sight. The courtyard gate swings open under your hand. You wheel the cart to its corner and begin to unload. The clay pot, now significantly lighter than at dawn, still holds a small amount of broth, enough for your own evening meal, enough to become the base of tomorrow's broth once you add to it. The bread basket is almost empty, 2 rounds left, their crust beginning to soften from hours in their cloth wrap. You take them for yourself. The copper pot, the ladle, the cutting board, the knife, the small bowls and jars, all of it comes off the cart and gets carried to the well. You lower the bucket in the dark and bring it up cold. The water over your hands is a different kind of cold. From the morning, this cold is not waking up cold, but the cool of completion, the temperature of water at the end of a day, when it seems to reach into all the places your palms have been working since before dawn and draw the heat and soreness out. You scrub the copper pot with river sand and a rush scrub. You rinse the ladle and the cutting board and lay them to dry over the well's stone lip. The water you splash away across the courtyard stones, and it runs between the cracks and disappears. Overhead, the last long ribbon of sunset color is already graying at the edges. You sit on the stone bench in the corner of the courtyard and pour yourself what remains in the herbal drink jar. It is completely cold now, cold as the ice that kept it, though the ice itself is long gone. You drink it slowly, not tasting it the way you would have tasted something new, just feeling the familiar sweetness and sourness as a kind of companion. From somewhere in the neighborhood, 2 blocks over, perhaps 3, the sound of children singing carries through the evening air. The melody is simple, repetitive, the kind of tune that belongs to no particular season and has no particular origin. Just children's voices, unself-conscious, slightly out of tune, drifting over the walls. The first watch drum sounds. 1 set of beats, evenly spaced, telling the city that the first division of the night has come, that the curfew has settled over the blocks and lanes, that the gates of the residential quarters are now bolted from the inside. The sound is the same sound you have heard every night here. It is not an alarming sound. It is, in fact, the opposite, the sound of a city organizing itself toward rest. You go inside. The washing is done. The courtyard has gone still, and there is nothing left now but the small reckoning that comes at the end of every working day. The wooden money box sits on the shelf beside the bed. You carry today's coins to it now and open the lid. Inside, the accumulated coins from the week sit in a loose, irregular pile copper coins, round with square holes at their centers, the 4 incised characters on their face still sharp in the newest ones, and softened almost to suggestion in the oldest, most handled ones. The text on every coin is the same: open beginning, circulating treasure, the words for this currency that the city has used for as long as anyone alive can remember. You have been told that the calligraphy on the original molds was done by one of the great masters of the official style, a man whose brushwork was famous enough to be studied by scholars. You count what you earned today. A few coins more than yesterday. Not a large difference. But the margin is real, and real margins, accumulated day by day, become the thing that makes a life workable in a city this large and this expensive. Your teacher told you that, truthfully, in your first week, Chang'an is large and it is generous, but it does not give things away. You earn your place here daily. You set the lid back on the box. The candle on the table is burning low. You watch it for a moment, the flame steady, unhurried, casting its small circle of light that touches the edge of the money box, the corner of the work table, the measuring board you laid there again tonight after clearing the dishes. You lie down. The sleeping mat holds the warmth of the room. The cotton quilting, worn soft over years of use, settles around you. You pull it up around your shoulders and let your eyes close. The room is quiet in the way that a room only becomes quiet after a full day, not empty quiet, but settled quiet, the kind that comes when everything that needed to happen has happened. The candle makes almost no sound. The courtyard is still. From the old carpenter's room, a slow and even breathing tells you he has been asleep for some time already. Through the paper window, the night has gone fully dark. A few stars are visible at the highest corner of the window's frame, the same stars, more or less, that were there this morning when you first opened your eyes. They are neither closer nor further. They give off the same faint light. The city hums below them with a particular hum of 1,000,000 lives settling towards sleep at roughly the same hour, in their courtyard rooms and riverside quarters and stacked residential blocks, each person horizontal, each person done. The sounds come back slowly as you begin to drift. Not loudly, not with any urgency, just rising up the way warmth rises from a stone surface that has been in the sun all day, gradually, gently, still present after the source of heat has moved on. The crack of the bread crust, that clean, dry sound, the resistance giving way all at once under the pressure of a bite. You have heard it so many times today that it has become a kind of rhythm, the sound of the morning repeated, the afternoon repeated, each customer a note in the same ongoing phrase. The thud of copper coins on the cart's wooden surface, their particular weight, their temperature cool in the morning, warmer by midday, neither significant on its own, but accumulating, coin by coin, into the small, real security of an evening's count. The courier moving away while still eating, not willing to stop even for the duration of a meal. The 3 scholars sitting under the scholar tree, the tallest one, exhaling slowly over his herbal drink with the relief of someone who has been holding their breath for months. The brush and ink man, eating with the unhurried precision of someone who no longer needs to rush anywhere, and finding in your bread the taste of a night long ago when he was young and had just been told his name was on the successful list. The man from the eastern peninsula, standing still with his bread, half eaten, working out what exactly had just happened in his mouth. The Persian merchant, closing his eyes before the first bite. All of them passing through this one spot on the stone surface of the market, this patch of shadow beneath the old scholar tree, this particular corner of the most populous city in the world, each one carrying a different origin, a different direction, a different reason for being here. A city is not its walls or its drum beats or its market rules. It is this, the constant arrival and departure of people who need something, and the small transactions that sustain them. Your old teacher knew this. He said it in different ways on different days. Sometimes he framed it as practical advice. Sometimes it came out as something closer to a kind of philosophy of the stall. The stall is a meeting point, he said. The food is the reason to stop. But what actually happens is that 2 people are in the same place at the same moment, and something passes between them, and they both carry it a little further down the road. You did not fully understand him at first. You were 22 and new to the city, and mostly concerned with learning the correct ratio of fat to lean and the right temperature for the charcoal. The larger thoughts could wait. But 3 years of mornings have a way of accumulating their own kind of understanding. Quietly, without announcement, the way flour gathers in the cloth bag at the base of the mill, almost imperceptibly, and then one day you lift the bag and it is heavy. The night patrol passes through the lane outside. 2 knocks of the wooden clapper. A pause. Then the footsteps continue, unhurried, already past your gate, already moving on toward the next block. The sound fades to the left. Then silence resumes, and the silence is deeper for having been briefly interrupted. The carpenter's breathing continues from across the courtyard. Slow, even, like a tide. Your own breath matches it gradually, without you trying. In and out, in and out, the pace dropping without decision, the body knowing what the mind has not yet caught up to. The day is done. The pot is clean. The coins are counted. Everything that needed doing has been done. Tomorrow, the drum will sound again. 3,000 beats, rolling outward from the palace walls, crossing the wide avenues and the narrow lanes, reaching through paper windows and thick gates alike, telling the city's 1,000,000 occupants that the market is open, the day has started. The agreement between all these people to keep living this way together has been renewed once more. You will be up before the drum. You will carry the empty bucket to the well in the dark lane and hear the water carrier's footsteps on the flagstones, and fill the bucket in the half-light with water that maps the slowly brightening sky back up at you. You will push open the mill house door. You will grind the flour, feel it fall, sift it, feel it drift through your fingers like clean snow. You will knead the dough, cover it with its damp cloth, and wait. You will feed the charcoal and watch the broth begin to move. Perhaps the new man from the eastern peninsula will find your stall again. He seemed to want to understand the bread more fully, the way it works, the thinking behind the shape and the method. Perhaps the scholars will come back with news. Perhaps a new caravan will have arrived overnight from the western roads, and the morning will carry a smell you have not yet named. Or perhaps it will be an ordinary day, the courier, the craftsman, the merchants, the women with their flowers, the old man with his careful appetite and his long memory. An ordinary day in Chang'an is still a day inside the largest and most complicated living thing you have ever been part of. You came here 3 years ago with a single wooden trunk and the name of your cousin written on a folded piece of paper in your pocket. The city was enormous and bewildering and loud, and for the first weeks you were not certain you would stay. Your teacher took you on, which was luck. The well water and the millstone and the copper pot came one at a time, which was patience. The stall position under the scholar tree came from getting up early enough, day after day, until the space became yours by quiet habit and by the tacit acknowledgement of everyone around you. That is how a place in a city this size is made, not by claiming it, but by returning to it, by being present in it so consistently that your absence would be noticed. The stars move a little above the paper window. Somewhere across the city, a dog barks once, then goes quiet. The candle has burned down to its last small inch of light, the flame narrow now, pulling slightly to one side in a draft you cannot feel, casting a long, thin shadow across the ceiling. It will go out on its own in a few minutes. You do not need to watch it. You let your eyes close. The smell of the morning is already there. Somewhere in the back of the mind, the cold stone of the courtyard underfoot, the rope of the well bucket in your palm, the first low groan of the millstone turning, the first pale thread of flour falling into the cloth, the smell of the broth building, the smell of the bread on the fire, the sounds of the city before the city wakes. You are already almost there.